Hello everybody, so this is another video I'm adding to my playlist, the JodyVision. I usually make the title say the JodyVision plus a subject matter, but in my last video I kind of used it as part of the title and the aspect of distinguishing between the visions, the dreams, and the fantasy, right? So, or anything that's your imagination, which in that video, I really wanted to kind of do a recap of everything bringing me up to the time before I left Colorado to move to Montana. And I also want to make sure I hit a few important points in my timeline before we leave here. And so I also have a couple of videos where I went out on the road and talked a little bit about receiving blessing after vision quest. And I really just wanted to make that kind of a combination of me sharing some of my timeline and sharing the place it brought me to, because I feel like this is where I came to receive blessing, to be honest. And so maybe that's a good thing. And so follow my visions has been really frustrating because you have this guy Bill. I think he serves as more of a white rabbit, you know, like, so I'm supposed to go after him, but I'm not really supposed to catch up, and that way I learn from it, right? So, but at the same time, there has been a lot of good things to come. And I think, you know, I kind of reconnected with Rosie for that reason. And then, let's see, going back, I think I've tried to go over a few things like meeting Ted. I think that was a good story because I went down south of Woods Bay and I thought that's where I'll start my lecture. And then I'll show you where the vision took me when I was driving through Colorado. I had a visionary slip on the highway while I was driving. And my passenger was telling me about this guy Ted I'm going to meet, but he said this is an old friend of yours that you're going to meet, and we're just south of Big Fork. So anyways, just a recap on some of the past videos and where we're at in my timeline is, you know, kind of, oh man, I got an itch. How embarrassing. Anyways, I just go ahead and be myself on these videos. In fact, I don't think I even combed my hair today. I just sort of, you know, just kind of straighten it out. So I'm not like, you know, I'm not trying to reach the world or anything. I mean, I make these videos because they're just fun to recap on all the weird things that have happened in my life. And at the same time, I feel like everything that happens in your life is what brought you to where you are, like myself, you know. And I think, you know, a big part of what brought me here is, yeah, maybe it has a lot to do with the visions and stuff. And so now, one of the things I want to bring up today is Roger Brachman when he died. And so before that, I also made a video of when Roger brought me to Big Fork. So I had a visionary slip over at his house, and I realized that after I moved to Big Fork, then I started kind of seeing and remembering some of that same stuff. And so just a quick recap on who Roger Brachman was to me is, I'm thinking, I was going through Boulder, Colorado. I was hungry. I went into this Chinese restaurant and I met a guy named Will there. I started talking to him because his t-shirt implied that he's doing internal training, and he had a Florida number, and I was like, oh wow, looks like you've been doing some internal training down in Miami, you know, or down in Florida. And then while I was sitting there eating, Will brought out a big fat book showing me, yeah, you know, blah, 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 blah. I was real excited about his training and all this information. And so me and him started training together because, you know, we could hang out and smoke pot and stuff, you know. And then but then he introduced me to Roger Brachman. And he was more straight, and he didn't want us smoking pot and stuff like that. But he was training out of his basement. He had a basement apartment at his parents', and he had a big backyard that he would take us out to. And Roger was dealing with the condition of being bipolar, and it has led to his divorce and him living in the basement of his parents. But on the bright side, then, you know, he liked to think he's there to be their guardian, you know, because he's very well trained and knowledgeable, you know. So Roger was a big help in a lot of ways, you know. I wish I had my notebook here, but what he did with his students is he created a personalized program based on what you want to learn. And he had a few different categories. I think he had, like, you know, the combat warrior, you just want to learn to fight. Then he had the scholar warrior, you're the kind of fighter that needs to learn, you know, history and background. And so that would apply really well. Like if you say the combat warrior just really wants to learn to fight, you know, it doesn't apply that they really care to learn all the history and stuff. So like if you're someone that goes to Shaolin, like the class I was going to in Denver, they tell you, you know, if you just want to learn to fight, you need to go to the an MMA gym. But if you come to our school, what you're learning is classical martial arts and a lot of history, so that's good for the scholar warrior. So I've been in that type of condition. But then the last path was the mystic warrior, and since I expressed that I have an interest in psychic awareness and how that goes hand in hand with martial arts, that became my path. So I was his only student in that grouping, and so he was building a notebook specifically for me, and so I think that's a great idea. I might actually use that if I were to create my own backyard program, and let the student build their notebook. And maybe other classes might consider doing this, is like as your student goes through the classes, maybe each time they bring home some information and put it into their notebook, and they'll have their own personal textbook, so to speak, you know. Anyways, so he was really knowledgeable and helpful. I felt like going to his training. So it's called Kuntao Silat, and he was under William de Tor, so they call that guy Uncle Bill. And what Kuntao Silat is so down in Indonesia they call their training Silat. So you might hear the terms like Panjak Silat and Kandangan Silat. So he had more of Kandangan Silat, which was one where they trained to percussion. So you might have somebody that's playing the drum, or maybe a drum circle present during your training. So I really like that, you know. So they're implying that you should be training to music and training to rhythm, and I was like, hey, that's exactly what I've been doing. And if you look in my some of my videos, I've done a number of videos where I do some what I call beatboxing. So same idea, just better music. No, just kidding. So I was like, oh man, I've been doing the same thing. But yeah, so very good confirmation in that. And then what Kuntao is when the Chinese people arrived in Indonesia, they had Kung Fu, but maybe they weren't getting good results, you know. So maybe Kung Fu works good on other people who do Kung Fu. But the Silat guys may have had advantages that the Kung Fu guys didn't have. So in a sense, they were kind of adapting and changing to be able to fight people who do the Silat instead. So in a way, it's like the Kung Fu is just being adapted to be able to fight in Indonesia. But then, they also, if you can't beat them, join them, right? So I'm thinking that's why we have Kuntao Silat. So we're kind of taking the Chinese adapted the Kung Fu, and so, you know, they went to Indonesia, they changed their Kung Fu and they called it Kuntao. And Kuntao is like, Kun is maybe the way of the fist, you know, because Dao is like, you know, the way. Gundao, it's the way of the fist. It's just like, you know, karate or something, just, you know, Taekwondo is the way we punch and kick down here. And so they were blending it together, so that way they would have the advantage. So these guys only have the Silat training, but these guys were taking their adapted, you know, their Kung Fu adaptation, they were blending it with the Silat, and maybe that was their answer. So it's kind of a cool story. And so Uncle Bill grew up in Indonesia. Now, Grandmaster Tay, if you go to Shaolin Kung Fu, also grew up in Indonesia. And I'm not sure if he's really aware of all this stuff, you know. So I got on the phone and tried to talk to him about this a little bit. And so Uncle Bill, he's actually half Dutch, half Indonesian. So you can see it in him. So he looks like, you know, he's kind of a tall, lanky guy. He doesn't seem very strong at all, but people say when, you know, he demonstrates on him, you can tell he's actually got a lot of hidden power. So Uncle Bill's pretty neat, and it sounds like he's teaching some pretty good stuff. And this is somebody who's had to fight in the street. And so my instructor, Guru Brachman, was able to participate in that group. And it's a very special group that not, you know, it's not so much that is exclusive, but, you know, it's just really only people that have been around a long time that can train at that level. And so I think that group is interesting because they kind of like to explore other martial arts. Like they would have their family gathering every year, and they would have different instructors giving lessons on all kinds of different stuff, including Tai Chi and other things. So that's really open-minded and flexible, you know, being able to say maybe you decide you're going to be in a certain style, but you're willing to explore other styles. And I think that's smart for a few different reasons. So you can appreciate their style, but hey, at the same time, you can also learn how to fight against those styles. Right? And so that's exactly where Kuntao Silat comes from, is the Chinese people need to find a way to go against people that had Silat, which at first seemed to have the advantage. So anyways, that's a little bit about the art. And so with training at Rogers, you know, so he actually taught me my first boxing, you know, like how to throw the 1, 2, you know, 3 and 4. And so he kind of gave me a head start. And since then, I've made a lot of adaptations to improve that, because I think he kind of has the old school way. He actually introduced me to the aspect of jiu-jitsu, when you fall on your back, how you get your feet in front, at least trying to hold guard, you know. That's like the first thing you want to learn is if you fall down, you really want to hold your guard, meaning you want your feet between you and your opponent. So, and then he also showed me some good Viking training, and just like the people of the north, you know, they go around with these big rocks and throw them, and then maybe like a big pole. Then he was showing me how you like throw tires to each other, and then your job is to punch it out of the air. And some of the iron bone training we were doing, you know, he had like, it kind of seemed like that pottery, you know, like that red colored pottery. He had kind of like this big tube of that, and he was teaching me how to like hit and turn your hand, and this really cool technical stuff. And like, I'm like not even a white belt yet. Like, he's teaching his beginners some pretty cool stuff to give them a foundation. And so I really appreciate Roger. So I wanted to say some good things here, because the reason I had to quit training with Roger is he was starting to get mean. And so I quit going up there because he was really getting mean. He was mad at me because I wasn't able to make it on time and stuff like that. And so he was going to try to physically punish me during my training. And kind of telling me that, you know, masters have historically done this, but, you know, I think he tried that on me a little bit, and that was probably the last time I went there. Anyways, so earlier on I did a video, and I'm just going to recap a little bit, that I was at Roger's house, and he wanted me, one of the assignments he gave me was to go down into his basement apartment and meditate for 100 breaths. Well, I did 108 breaths. I don't know if I told him that, but I like that number better. And I already know breathing and meditation, but I took the assignment, and it's kind of funny because I think that's the day that I went to a visionary slip. Now, so Roger already has, he likes staffs and sticks. And I think he already had one similar to this one, but in the visionary state, he showed me this particular stick. And it's the one that Howard Clearlight made. So when Howard Clearlight was living down in Texas, him and Rosie used to go over to the beach and get that driftwood. So, you know, so Roger Brachman showed me this weapon, and he broke it down, and he explained the knot, and he showed me how this could be a deadly weapon, you know. I mean, you would want to get hit with this part of the weapon in certain places. That could, you know, that could be it for you. But it's a very nice weapon if you don't want to hurt somebody. You might just have this in your hand, and it's actually kind of, you can be soft with it. And so he explained the knot and a few important things. Now, when we went for a truck ride, we were going to go someplace where I think we were in Thornton. So like you go Highway 25, and I don't know, I think he was between like 84th and 92nd, somewhere up in that area off of Washington. And we were going to get in a truck and drive over to, so from Thornton, I forget what those places are called over there right now. Like, it's not coming to mind, but it was like towards Broomfield. We're going up that way. It'll come to me eventually, but we're going over there to like a park where there's a big set of stairs. And I was thinking, when you get to the top, you know, if you could see a lake from there, you'd probably see what they call Stanley Lake. But what happened is I went into visionary state, and we ended up going up a hill. We were up on this hill across from the high school in Big Fork in visionary state. You know, we should have been in Colorado, possibly facing Stanley Lake, but since I was in visionary state, all of a sudden, no, I was up on this hill across from the high school, kind of like beside the football field, so if you know the area, and looking out over Flathead Lake, which is huge. You know, you can't even see the end. There's just a horizon. You can't even see the other end. It's so huge. And he's like, "Do you know where we are?" I'm like, "Is that Stanley Lake?" He goes, "No, that's Flathead Lake." And in that vision, he drove me by Rosie's house, and then I think we came back and we hiked up that hill, and he had this staff. He said, "I want you to use this staff for a reason," you know, kind of thing. So anyways, in reality, after I moved to Montana, I was sitting there with Rosie. I'm thinking this must have I mean, I got there in 2009, and it must have took us to the very next year, like, because we were sitting home alone a lot and just talking, and I don't know, I was starting to get to where I was having another episode where, like, instead of going to visionary state, I was getting to that point where I was reliving stuff. Like, I was going to relive this one and a bunch of other ones that were really good, and So it's kind of getting to that era where I'm going to share about later. And that's where I found these weapons over by the door. And I said, wow, Rosie, what's this? You know, it's like, I don't know how long it took me to notice them. But she said, you know, Jody, Howard told me that he wants you to have those. So, you know, I've done some, a lot of talks about Rosie and Howard. Like, they're the ones that were in my vision in 1982. I met Rosie in 96, stayed in touch kind of. We actually lost contact in 98 because she moved away and I couldn't find her information. But strangely, it reappeared right where I looked several times, right? And there it was. And so I finally got in touch with her. I think getting in touch with Rosie was kind of inspired by knowing that I met her in the vision. So I kind of wanted to reconnect and make, you know, go over that with her. And so, of course, she didn't remember Florida and Billy and all that stuff. But we stayed in touch, and then she ended up inviting me to come to Montana. And so, you know, shortly after I got here, I think I had a visionary slip, and so I even, right off the bat, but, you know, her husband, Howard, had died, and she felt that he was present quite a bit, you know, kind of, you know, he's the guy that was a Zen Buddhist monk, and that's why they call themselves Clear Light, because it's like an honorary name. So it's kind of neat that I found people like that. You know, I think they're like your classic West Coast hippies who highly supported the Eastern wisdom and spirituality like that. So I think that's where, you know, Howard put himself right in the middle of that and helped to start the first Zen Buddhist monastery in the Tassajara over there near San Francisco. So I think if you actually went there, you'd see his name on a plaque. So I feel like these kind of people, I feel like them moving up here was sort of like a spirit-guided act, you know? And then having me move up here was also sort of a spiritually guided act. And that's why I did that video where I'm saying this is where I came to receive blessing, because that's what the medicine man would say. When you go back to Denver, you will receive blessing. And that was Rosie buying me a ticket to Montana. So anyway, so that's kind of where how Roger ties in with my story. Is he was, they call him Guru Brachman. He was my instructor that taught, you know, Kuntao Silat, and the subject matter was the mystic warrior path, okay? And that's where this gets kind of interesting, because you know, I since Howard had died, I was kind of told I might know that he was present by maybe one of my shirts would be missing, but then it would reappear. And that's around the time Rosie was telling me, you know, I can have this stick. And then she explained all the same thing. It was like the same exact conversation. She told me the same exact thing that Roger told me to explain the knot and all that stuff. So the knot, it does kind of represent kind of like a circle and a cross, you know, kind of. So kind of makes sense. I mean, you wouldn't think of that at first, but having her explain that to me explains, you know, I guess if you know about Celtic knots, you know, sometimes they represent circles with these knot type of drawings and designs. And so yeah, so very interesting that I went into a visionary slip with Roger as one of his mystic students and mystic warrior students, and he's the one that told me about this weapon. So it would have been like 2006, so it would take till 2010, like maybe winter into spring was about when all this was coming together, and I was able to realize you know, that Roger's the one that showed me the stick first in the visionary state. So anyways, of course I had to quit going to Roger's because he was getting too scary, and I really didn't like the way he was treating me, even though I do appreciate all of his knowledge, and then so there's a certain degree of inspiration and confirmation all at the same time. It was a very good experience until I got to that point, but maybe he was getting worse, and he ended up ending his life, you know. So I think it just, you know, being divorced, just, you know, having to, you know, probably not being able to keep a job, and just, who knows, maybe he's done a lot of things that he regrets and all that stuff. But it just all, you know, what happened was, I actually, I think I found the video. So there's some people under Uncle Bill that didn't like Roger, you know, and I think, you know, I had come across the video where the person was talking to Uncle Bill about Roger and something that he did that, you know, he wasn't too happy about. And that's when Uncle Bill said, you know, that guy is just an asshole. And so I'm kind of wondering if that had anything, if that was like the last straw, right, for Roger, you know, because he loved that man so much, you know. And I'm just thinking, you know, Roger told me he had this enemy, and I don't know if his name was Steve. It might have been Steve. And so there was this video where Steve and Uncle Bill were talking, And I'm thinking when Uncle Bill said that guy is just an asshole, I made the connection. So I'm just going to assume, you know, Roger's had a lot of things piling up, and then Uncle Bill had to go and say the guy was just an asshole. So anyways, and I'm going to have to make a little bit of a confession. You know, I've really tried to stay, you know, like I've done psychedelics off and on, particularly like when I was new to Denver, you know, like I couldn't wait, you know, because I was hearing about all this, you know, this type of lifestyle and everything, and I'm more of a psychedelic person, so I really kind of think it's interesting, and I had access. There were people living right there in my building. Like, there were a lot of college-age kids, late teens, early 20s. A lot of people going, you know, to raves and stuff. And so there was always, you know, some good drugs available. And so, yeah, I like to think, you know, when I go into visionary state, it's not necessarily a byproduct of psychedelic substances, because I've talked to like Master Tay from Kung Fu, has had a lot of very interesting visionary slips throughout his life, and he's pretty clean cut, you know. And then I have another friend, she's pretty straight laced, I mean, very professional and nice lady, and she says she's had to have spent at least 1,000 years in the visionary state, you know. Right? She's been to so many visions, you know. And I feel like, well, I've added at least about, you know, I don't know, maybe 5 months to my lifespan, you know, by, you know, going into visionary state, you know, you could be there for months. And, you know, if you ever see Narnia, I think they were gone for 15 years before they came back. But, you know, she's, you know, so it's not necessarily a drug thing, but, because I was having them between the age of 6 and 12, and I was definitely not on any drugs. But then you got to wonder if it got in my system through my parents or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. You know, because I wasn't doing drugs like that. And then, like, so in, I would say, like, 98 into 2000, you could easily say, well, you were doing smoking a lot of pot and, you know, and tripping and stuff like that. And that's true, but I've never experienced, I don't usually experience visionary state while I'm tripping, except maybe, you know, maybe in 99, I think I had a visionary slip while I was tripping at Frontline Assembly, and I saw my friend Charlie up on stage with them, and I met Charlie later on. I'm like, hey, I remember you were with Frontline Assembly. And he goes, no, I wasn't, you know. And I'm like, yeah, you were, dude. You had on the same clothes and everything. And he's like, it's like, you gotta be crazy. I don't even know those guys, you know. Like, so it's easy to say, you know, some of this stuff comes from just tripping. And so it could coincide, you know, like maybe it does help to open up the pathways necessary to do that more. And so I've really tried to stay away from it for a while, just to make sure, you know, that that's not what's causing it, because I felt like it was just complicating my life. And it's like, you know, I really need to try to stay on track and keep an income, and, you know, keep a stable income and all that good stuff. And if I'm kind of, you know, caught up in all this, you know, I don't know what you call it, but it's very confusing and it can really throw you off track. So don't want that to happen. So I really tried to stay off it. And I think I was getting back into it a little bit now. And so that's where I'm starting to wonder if, like, maybe there's some truth in that. Like, maybe, you know, doing psychedelics might help open up that that pathway that allows me to do visionary slips and stuff. So that's where I haven't done it in quite a while. And so I haven't been having the visionary slips as far as I know. I haven't really seen. What I'm seeing is like more like, back in '98, my dad told me some story with all this information, and I keep seeing little bits and pieces of that coming true. But, like, otherwise, I feel like I've been pretty level, you know. I don't know. I have emotional ups and downs. I'm actually 49, so that might be why, if you think about the age I'm at, women start to go through the change, and that could actually make women hysterical. So I have to be extra mindful not to get hysterical or, you know, let it drive me crazy. Anyways, so just to, you know, look at, you know, my actual mental condition and the fact that, you know, I'm conscientious about where psychedelics fit in and stuff like that, because I think, and so in some of my other stories, I've been trying to go through this, trying to figure out who Bill Lieb is and if we should connect. And the very last time I seen him would have been in 2008 in September. So I'm thinking a couple months later, so just to, like, place it in my timeline, you know, because I want to make sure I hit all the points. I think I've already gone over Bill Lieb and all that. And so that's kind of where, you know, I'm kind of done with that part. Now we're going to talk about when Roger died. I'm going to talk about when I got visited by what we call God, what we call Jesus, and I'm going to talk about going to visionary state over the next couple videos. So, but in this one, I'm going to talk about when Roger died, because, you know, I was hanging out with my friend John. We were tripping all night, and, oh, I got to get my staff. Well, first of all, John was getting mad at me because I couldn't stop talking about Bill Leeb and all that stuff. And he's like, Jody, you just need to quit thinking about it. It's like you're just, you know, you're just rehashing an old nightmare, you know, you really need to stop doing that. And so I remember that's where I can place that in my timeline. I was just like, ah. And so, you know, I've had to put John through all that, having to listen to me bitch about Bill Leeb and how I didn't make the connection. So that's why I'm seeing that in my timeline. It had to have been after the delirium, and I was just kind of in that, like, really, so, and then I started talking about the staff. Like, so this is the one I bought off of Roger, actually. He prepared the staff, and I probably had the same exact one. And I was kind of going on a lecture about how important the staff is and what it means and blah, blah, blah. It was almost like I just started thinking of Roger and talking like Roger. You know, I just felt like, and John's like, Jody, calm down. You know, I was just acting just like Roger, you know, and I was thinking about Roger, and then all of a sudden I could see in my mind's eye, you know, that I was above Red Rocks Amphitheater. And I've been up there a number of times, you know, there's like a couple different ways, and I could see Roger in his truck from the sky. I saw his truck, and it was all kind of fast, you know, like it was all like a video of him traveling up the road really quickly. Like I saw, you know, kind of his headlights, you know, kind of making their way up, and he went all the way up to the top, and he got into, there's like that round parking lot, because that's what we do for a good time, you know. Like, I kind of think, I don't know if we're not supposed to, no, I guess you're allowed to go up there, but they don't really like us to go hiking in there. That's what it was, but a lot of people do it anyways, you know. People go up there, park, and they go try to hike up into the rocks a little bit, and it has a beautiful point of view, you know. So I know that route, and I saw him in that flash. It seemed like it was nighttime. I could see him quickly make that trip, and then when he got up there, I could see just a really quick flash of him putting a gun to his mouth and just poof. So he made sure he ended his life in a beautiful place where, you know, he probably went up on time to see the city lights and all that, and he probably, you know, had to like make up his mind, so to speak. But it didn't seem like he spent a lot of time making up his mind, you know. Like I could just see that flash of him making the trip up to the helicopter pad and putting himself in a position to look out over the horizon and position himself so he could see, you know, downtown Denver and everything. And then he just went boom, you know. So I didn't see the gory details. I just saw sort of the action. Thankfully I didn't have to see much more than that. It was just such a, and it was over. And I was like, oh, I just felt so emotionally shaken all night. And I'm pretty sure John thought it was just because, you know, I can't get over Bill Leeb and all that stuff. But yeah, I just felt like something was just really, you know, what you call a disturbance in the force, so to speak. And I was just getting really antsy, and I just wanted to get on my moped, and I wanted to go home. And John's like, no, don't do it. I want you to stay here till you sober up. You know, I don't want you, you know, taking your moped out while you're tripping. So that was very kind of him. So he's a good friend, and he wanted to keep me out of trouble, but he really didn't like the conversation I wanted to have nonetheless. So, you know, so thanks, John, for that. And anyways, so I wanted to talk about that because it's like something where I've seen things in remote viewing at different times, like, you know, like completely sober in dreams or whatever. But this one, you know, not sure if I can blame LSD or anything, like if it had anything to do with it. You know, maybe it was something to help open up those channels of perception. So I think, you know, just because somebody's used psychedelics doesn't mean that what they're seeing isn't real to any extent, you know, because it's something where we're talking about in my past video, like some of it's like self-generated hallucinations. I think people can do that very much, but sometimes you're also being exposed to information that's remote to you, or you're kind of getting a small taste of what it's like to have some psychic clarity, you know. But if you're not used to it, it's just like, you know, I think some people have a bad time with it because it's too much at once, because I think it reduces your filters, you know. That way, you know, your brain is made to function at a certain level, like, you know, you're just really trying to survive on the physical level, and it's not really meant to facilitate that much information. So when you take a psychedelic, I think it reduces those filters, and all that information then just pours in. And for some people it can absolutely drive them crazy, but I think if you maybe take it moderately and maybe you are prepared, then psychedelics can actually be useful. And there are a lot of people out there that are using psychedelics for psychological reasons, to help people to come to terms with old issues and stuff like that. And I personally kind of want to do the same thing, you know. I kind of want to go out and travel and see if I can find somebody that uses psychedelic methods to help, you know, to correct your psychology. So you need to correct your psychological condition or whatever, and that way, like, I could come to terms with all the stuff that is bothering me. Because in my case, I kind of feel like it bothers me about, like, so, you know, I've been wanting to share about my visionary state. I've been wanting to meet the person from the visions, and all that's ever done was, you know, kind of make me unlucky in the way of, I feel like I've been put down and judged in a bad way, and sort of being called like this dangerous person. You know, if they call somebody psychotic, is really saying that they're a dangerous person that's, you know, likely to hurt somebody. So stuff like that. And so, you know, I have to come to terms, because I know I'm not that person, and that's all it's kind of a lie in a sense, you know. It's like, it's not even a misconception. I think it's really just a lie. And stuff like that, you know. So stuff like that has been harmful to me over the years, and you know, like stuff like that. So anyways, I just kind of wanted to go on a tangent about, you know, that I've used psychedelics and kind of where I see them, and that for the most part I've been avoiding them for now, other than smoking some pot, which is actually on the low end of the spectrum of psychedelics. I do kind of like to keep one foot in the physical, one foot in the spiritual to some extent, but I want to make sure that I'm staying level-headed, I'm not getting too far out and all that stuff, you know. So like, but, you know, for me to go over my visions and all the weird stuff, it sounds like I'm getting far out, so that's kind of want to reiterate that, no, I'm actually trying to stay level-headed and always look at things with logic and reason. But at any rate, the central topic to this story was that I wanted to mention that who Roger Brachman was to me, and how I witnessed him ending his life in and it was like not so much in visionary state, but more in a psychic flash, where I was seeing above the land, and I saw him go up the mountainside. You know, it's kind of a hill that goes up to some rock outcroppings and stuff, and then I just saw him in his vehicle, like I could see him through the windshield just for a moment as he made that movement, and as he was pulling the trigger, and I knew. And here's where I got the confirmation. I think maybe the very next year or so, I called up another guy called Uncle Wayne, who they called the Old Dragon. So Uncle Wayne's an old dragon. I met him. He was a big, kind of a fat guy, but he just super strong. When I shook his hand, it was just this big pad of meat, you know. So he's a super impressive martial arts guy that's in his old age. Anyway, so I got a hold of Wayne because I just wanted to see how everyone is, you know, because I quit talking to Will, because that's the guy I started training with, who introduced me to Roger, because Will was binging on cocaine, you know, so he's super intelligent, and I really got along with him because he's kind of a quirky guy. Will was from Miami. He's like Puerto Rican and Cuban, and, you know, listens to rap music and punk music, but he was a very different person, and me and him got along great. But I had to part ways with Will because of his cocaine. And then, so, you know, I kind of wanted to reconnect with Will, and so I was trying to call up Uncle Wayne and talk to him, and that's when Uncle Wayne gave me the bad news that Roger ended his life. And when he told me about the time, you know, it was around November of 2008, that's around the time I had that psychic flash. And so the only other time I can see where I had a psychic flash is if you go back into my timeline, I think it was year 2003. So me and my friend were working up at Red Rocks Amphitheater, and some of the guys at the gate confiscated some people's joints, and they offered a joint to us, and I took the joint. I took that joint, and I knew that was a bad idea because it's bad karma. And guess what? We were smoking that joint, man. We were actually at the 7-Eleven up in Golden, and just as we were leaving, I lit that joint, and as I lit the joint, I had a psychic flash, and it showed me to go up I-70, go up 36, you know, go up Wadsworth to 36. And it was showing me the way I was supposed to go, so it's a little bit different. It was a psychic flash where I was being guided, you know, so my spirit guides were trying to protect me from what was about to happen. So we lit that joint and drove right into a speed trap. Not a speed trap, but, you know, because Red Rocks just had the Coors Light Festival, they had a DUI trap up 93, you know, between Golden and Boulder, and so we went right into that and the car wrecked, and there's just no turning back. So I was like, ah. Anyways, so that's really interesting. That the only other time I can think of where I had like a distinct psychic flash, it's like seeing over the land. I was being given directions to avoid the speed trap, because God knows I can handle it, right? I can handle smoking pot and driving. Give me a break, you guys. So that's when I got that DUI. So that's kind of a funny story, but the really sad story was in 2008, having that psychic flash in a similar sense of that region. Just wow, you know. So I think that's a very interesting story about my ability. I don't feel like I have a lot of control over it, so that's where we have guiding spirits, you know. So we're part of an ecosystem of spirit beings, as well as animals and plants on Earth. There's an ecosystem made up of spirit beings that kind of interact and participate in our life in a certain way, kind of like religion is implying, theology is implying, you know, mythology, all of that, you know, theology, mythology, and all of that stuff. There's something to it, you know. It's just always, you know, it's the reason it's a great mystery is it's just so hard to really put your finger on it. But there's definitely something to it, as far as, you know, like thinking, you know, Rosie's ex-husband, Howard, you know, Howard Clearlight, after he died, was present. And I was also warned that, not warned, but foretold that I would know that Roger was present. And I think Roger was present when I discovered this weapon, and Rosie was giving me the lecture. Roger was present. And I was his mystic warrior student, and Roger was present. He showed me this weapon in the visionary state. Anyways, you guys, so that's just another branch of, like another type of an experience where I think I've seen proof of, you know, being able to see things in remote viewing and stuff like that. Somehow my spirit guides were able to, like, it's like I didn't even go out of my body. It was like I was right there. It's almost like a piece of my perception, you know, just a piece of my perception is kind of extended to where the incident happened, and I saw it almost like a sped up video. So I'm very sorry that had to happen, but you know, it's just something where, like, you know, I'm a JodyVision fan, and after Ian Curtis died, I think those guys have received a lot of letters where the fans talk about, man, I've thought about suicide a lot. When the guy from, what was it, Nirvana died, a lot of teenagers started thinking they wonder if they should also commit suicide. So sometimes, you know, that stuff that you have to think about, like, would you do that yourself? And so having a friend like that I know personally, you know, do something like that, and to top it all, like, you know, me and him didn't stay in touch forever and ever, but, like, you know, I was involved with him for at least a year as a student, and being shown that, being able to get the confirmation and all, you know, it just creates another colorful lesson for me, because this is something that has been I guess I could say it's a lifelong study for me. Like, I'm not very scholarly, I'm not very determined, I don't have like a desk set up and all this, you know, I'm not doing a whole lot to document it, but like I'm still kind of like looking at the possibility of you know, taking it more seriously. I kind of like to reach out and find the right people to examine some of the events of my life, particularly visionary state. I think something that people experience more common than not is deja vu. So if you experience deja vu, you're kind of getting a little bit of that time travel. It's a small, it's like a little bit of your perception has time traveled. If you've been out of body, I think that's something that maybe less people talk about, but is more commonly known. Having dreams about stuff and seeing some truth in it. Maybe your dream is like surrealistic, but it was telling you something that's going to happen. So it can be those half and halves. Some dreams are 100%. People will see 100% what's going to happen and see it happen. But visionary state is kind of like less likely. It's harder to find people who've had that. Anyways, that was just like something else I want to add to my list of like the different ways I've experienced the paranormal, being able to have a psychic flash, and being able to see something in remote viewing while I'm wide awake. And just like I said, I had that weird vibe, like I started talking like Roger, and next thing you know, I'm having a flash. Anyways, I hope you made sense of this video. I'm sorry if I ramble a little bit. I kind of go on tangents, but there's just sort of some backstory and some surrounding circumstances that really at the core, you know, surround the moment of realizing that I'd actually witnessed a person in remote viewing doing such a thing. And that's very deep, you know, that's very heavy on my heart, you know, to be able to witness that. And so, you know, prayers to Roger, you know, that in his crossing that that it became a healing process and all that good stuff, so that, you know, to be able to think you should cross over early like that, you really have to be, in his case, I think he was in pretty bad shape, so you got to pray for their healing. And, you know, thoughts and prayers do add up, even if it doesn't solve the problem. It's nice to be part of that gesture, to have the expression and that gesture of thoughts and prayer to Roger in his healing as a soul, and that trauma doesn't need to necessarily carry over into his life, you know, and all that stuff, you know, in his afterlife. When we cross over, a lot of people, they go through healing. But send him your thoughts and prayer, that Roger goes through that healing, and that Roger's not just an asshole, but somebody who had a very bad mental condition, and somebody that needed to heal from that. Anyways, you guys, have a good day. I will talk to you soon.